So yeah, so I think that's also something that's very urgent. And then finally, the third item on the Austin agenda, I wanted to talk about LOLA et al. So Liberation for One, Liberation from All, which is a community group that's been opposing the city of Buffalo's plans for a police shooting and firing range built at the Matt Urban Community Center near the Central Terminal, has officially filed a lawsuit along with 4 petitioners or residents that live in the immediate vicinity of the community center. So the city has, the city of Buffalo, along with the police department and the Common Council, is being sued by this community group and residents. To the goal is to halt the construction of the facility. So this kind of dovetails nicely with the East Side Parkways because a lot of the things that happen. So the group, the East Side Parkways Coalition, sued NISTOP because they didn't do an environmental impact statement. Where the lawsuit that LOLA and the petitioners, LOLA et al., are filing has some of the same thread. So I have a copy of the lawsuit here, but kind of the nature of the proceeding, and I'll summarize the lawsuit, right? Because there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and mainstream media coverage of this. I think the thing that's important to know is the City of Buffalo Police Department is planning on constructing a training facility and a firing range. The mainstream media mostly talks about a training facility, which, obviously we want officers training, but really the core of this lawsuit is around the firing range that they're proposing to build in the parking lot of the community center. So this is about a firing range ultimately in a residential neighborhood, because this Article 78 proceeding was filed within 4 months of the September 2nd, 2025 Common Council zoning map amendment for this facility. So in order to build a firing range in a residential neighborhood, or as the city green code says, a public safety facility, you can't build those in residential neighborhoods. So back in September, the Common Council approved a zoning map amendment that would change the community center zoning from residential to mixed use. And in a mixed use zone, public safety facilities are allowed. So this kind of action, this Article 78, which is a type of legal proceeding in New York State, was brought forward by LOLA and these petitioners to challenge the Common Council's decision on the zoning map amendment. So there's the seeker of actually part of the lawsuit is saying that the state environmental quality review process was not done properly, very similar to the Kensington of the Common Council. They've segmented the seeker. So part of state environmental quality review law, or seeker, is that you can't segment a project. So you can't cut a project up into slices, study them individually as you go along. You need to study everything up front, which is everything. So to construct this project, you need to do a state environmental quality review. One, when you're planning, designing the facility, you need to identify things like zoning changes, zoning variances. And that's just not what the city did. They published the state environmental quality review after the zoning map amendment, and there's a whole lot of, I call it a candy land of procedural errors. It's a very linear process, and they kind of did a mumble jumble candy land of zoning procedures. So there's this actual state environmental quality review violations that this group feels that the city alleges. Another one is the parkland. 379 Paderewski, the Matt Urban Hope Center, was first built in 1949 as the Adam Blavatsky Post. And Adam Blavatsky was a World War I hero. He was the first resident of the city of Buffalo to die in World War I. And the Blavatsky Post was constructed in 49, and it really was this cultural center, as I understand it, for the Polish community and Polish immigrants and refugees that settled near the Central Terminal. But prior to that, it was actually a piece of parkland. It was called Polonia Park. So the actual parcel, and one element of this lawsuit is actually challenging that there's a doctrine in New York State law that in order for a park to become not a park, the New York State legislature needs to authorize that, from my understanding. Right? So you can't just turn it into a park, because ultimately the parks belong to everyone. They belong to the people. So in order for a park to be stolen from the people, the representative body of the people, the New York State legislature, needs to authorize it. And this lawsuit alleges that that was never done. So actually part of the lawsuit is saying that the city cannot change the use of this facility from a community center into a police firing range without the New York State legislator authorizing that to occur. Which leads me to another part of the lawsuit, which is around the actual financing and the bonding. So the lawsuit alleges that actually the financing of the facility was not proper. One, this facility was initially proposed at 341 Seneca, and the state legislature, I think it was a year or two ago, they did authorize the changing of the bond for the previous facility to the new location, but they did not do, obviously, the parkland thing. But then when the Common Council did their action, they left actually about $500,000 not in their official bond documentation. So very in the weeds of the bonds. Also, they financed the facility, right? They said in the bond that they passed in March that they completed a state environmental quality review for the project because, again, according to Seeker, you needed to complete Seeker before you can finance and construct a project. But it appears, based on some of my foils and also, it appears that the city, that was a material misrepresentation, that the city did not complete Seeker before they did the bond. So there's actually, a material misrepresentation in the bond that should invalidate the financing for the facility. And then the final element of it is actually the city's green code. So the city of Buffalo Green Code does not actually have the term firing range or shooting range in it. So actually, if you search the city codes, that's just the rule book, the playbook of what you can build in the city. There is no language or prescription for a shooting firing range. So part of this case is actually that this construction of a firing range in the city of Buffalo, would set a precedent. So especially if it sets the precedent that you don't need to do an environmental review, if you don't need to do things properly, it sets the precedent of essentially anybody could then start a shooting range. Because right now it's unclear under the Green Code how if I, a citizen of the city of Buffalo wanted to set up a shooting range in my backyard, how could I do that? Where this case would actually set some precedent of, oh, well, you don't actually have to follow the procedures. So that's kind of the more technical argument. And then as I was in that wormhole of zoning code, I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe because the city green code does not state anything about firing ranges, then the state's building code, so the New York State Mechanical Code, would then be kind of the set of rules. And actually, in the New York State Mechanical Code, under firing range, it says that if you want to build a firing range, there is a section on lead, and you need to meet the OSHA standards for lead, because these firing ranges, again, it's a firing range. It's a shooting range. They want to take the parking lot of Polonia Park and turn it into a shooting range. These shooting ranges create a lot of lead dust and pollution. And actually, some of the OSHA standards around lead require that all employees that are above, I think it's the PEL or the personal exposure level of lead, after their shift, they need to shower. So actually, if you want to build a firing range under New York State Mechanical Code, you need to have proper showering facilities so that employees can shower and clean, because it's required by OSHA, a workplace rule that you have to have this lead remediation. Because essentially, earlier this year or last month in December, there's actually a zoning variance around the city essentially having a special use, or a variance to allow partial shading of there's a mechanical unit on the roof that's all about air filtering. And again, back to the seeker of the city should study how sound and lead is going to impact the community, right? How do people live next door? How is their life going to be impacted by being next to a shooting range? So that's kind of the other item. And I think next month is the scheduled hearing. So LOLA et al. Was a lawsuit brought by Liberation for One, Liberation for All, and a few residents. And again, the lawsuit is a kind of a four-piece. There's one, the actual bonding of the facility, so that the city did not follow the procedures to finance the facility. There's two, the state environmental quality review. So the state did not file state environmental quality review properly for the facility. Three, that they're not authorized to build it because of the parkland, and the New York State Legislature needs to authorize the taking of parkland to change its use. And then also the firing range is not allowed under the city green code. So that's a kind of the 4 point, and I'll provide a little more information, but right for now, that's kind of the high level summary of the lawsuit. And I encourage people to donate to LOLA if you'd like to support the legal fund. They're raising money to pay for legal fees, because unfortunately in New York State, in the Common Council, they kind of just dare you, right? We have the power, sue us type of thing. So lawyers, their billable hours cost money. So donate to their campaign. If you go to lowellbuffalo.com, they have a fundraising tab. And then also they have a virtual interest meeting, I believe on January 24th. So if you're interested in learning more, definitely check them out and follow them. And this is a slow moving. I think we'll see with this new regime or new administration, how does the new Corporation Council of the city deal with this lawsuit? Is this lawsuit able to, put a hold and slow it down? We'll see. So that's the Austin's agenda. So 3 biggest things: the special election coming up for the New York State Senate seat, the police firing range lawsuit by LOLA, and the Queen City Forward Kensington Expressway project. So let me